Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this talk. Uh, this is the final talk as part of the open day. Welcome. My name's Neil Evans. I'm a teacher and a manager at the British Council in Krakow. Um, I've been involved in teaching for many years, around 20 years now, and I'd like to talk to you about pronunciation and English as a global language today. I think lots of people might be coming to this talk thinking that I'm going to tell you how to pronounce English perfectly or how to uh, have the best accent ever. I'm not going to do that. I hope I don't disappoint anyone. I I guess I want to persuade you to think that pronunciation is not the most important thing in the world. Um, that might sound slightly strange, but I'm going to try and persuade you. Let's see how I do. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what we're talking about. Okay, here goes. So, as I mentioned, the topic I'm going to discuss for this final session of the British Council Open Day is what does it mean to have perfect pronunciation? Now, in this session, I'm going to cover a few key areas. We're going to have a think about some student voices, some things that students say to me and things I've heard over the years. They might have desires for a certain kind of pronunciation. I call it, I want to have this pronunciation. Um, we're going to think a bit about English as a truly global language and what that means. And I'm going to talk about what things you should focus on. So, some student voices. Over the years, I have spoken to a lot of students, and people come through the doors at the British Council and they tell me what kind of pronunciation they want to have. Um, I I would get you to have a think about this in your own head now. You know, what pronunciation would you like to have? Have you ever wanted to sound more British, American, or something else? Or are you more realistic? Do you simply want to improve your pronunciation? That's natural, isn't it? We all want to improve something. You might think, oh dear, I have terrible pronunciation. I really want to improve it. I think that's understandable. Some things I've definitely heard people tell me, I want to sound British, or I want to sound like a native speaker. Or some people have said, I want to impress people with my pronunciation. Now, I understand all of these feelings, I do. I think it's very natural. But I want to talk to you about English as a global language and why you might want to readjust these thoughts, feelings a little bit. So English is a truly global language. How many learners of English do you think there are? People studying English in the world. Can you have a guess? Do you think it's a few hundred million? Well, it's actually 1.5 billion people. That's a lot, isn't it? Do you think all of those 1.5 billion people have perfect pronunciation? Or do you think they sound like native speakers? Probably not. Let's think about the population of the UK. 67 million. So that's far smaller than 1.5 billion, isn't it? Can I just take a pause? Let me just close the window here because we have some really lovely music going on in Krakow at the moment. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. So 67 million people in the UK. Well, you know, they probably sound British, or do they sound English? Do they sound Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish? There's great variety, isn't there? So it definitely makes the idea of pronunciation quite complex. Okay, well, what's the population of the UK, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, Canada? These are native speakers, yeah? That's what we want to sound like. 461 million. Yes, it's a big number, but it doesn't even come close to our 1.5 billion learners of English, our main bulk of our English-speaking population, let's say. How many accents or dialects do you think there are in the UK? I mentioned a few. Are there 4, 5, 6? Well, there's actually 40. If you think about some of the big cities. I'm from Birmingham. There's a Brummie accent. In London, in some parts there is a Cockney accent. In Liverpool, you could call them Liverpudlian or Scouse. In Manchester, Mancunian. In Glasgow, Glaswegian. In Newcastle, Geordie. I could go on and on. There are so many different accents that the idea of sounding British is very complex. Yes, there is something called received pronunciation, which is probably a bit like I'm sounding right now, you know, your kind of classic British accent. But when you actually go to the country, it's not that simple, which might account for anyone that's been to the UK, and in some situations it's very difficult to understand people. So what does it mean to sound British? That's complex. I would pose this question to you. Um, who do you want to sound like? Do you want to sound British, Australian, American? Is there any sense in wanting to sound like a particular country or a particular group of people, especially when the picture is so complex with all the different accents? Perhaps sounding like yourself is actually best of all. Um, I have an interesting anecdote to tell you as well. A colleague of mine, he's British. He said that you know, trying to improve your pronunciation or trying to get a British accent is sometimes impossible. Sometimes nature is at play here and is an important factor. He's British and he's 2 children, his sons. What do you think they sound like? They've grown up in Poland. Do they sound British? Do they sound like they have a slight Polish accent? No, neither. They actually sound American. Why do you think that is? It's because of the influence of the internet. They watch a lot of TV shows and they digest things on YouTube, and they picked up a bit of an American accent. So sometimes you have no control over it. It really is down to nature and what things are around you. So certainly we have to almost get used to perhaps understanding how nature works and understanding what we sound like as a person. Okay, so I don't want to kind of give you the impression that there is nothing you can do. That's not true. You definitely can improve your pronunciation. But it's certainly important to remember that having a goal like sounding British or sounding like a native speaker is probably unrealistic. What should you focus on then? So I think you should identify weaknesses you have. Okay. Um, this isn't easy. You might need an outside opinion. You might need a friend to have a listen and give you an honest opinion. You might need an expert to tell you. It's not easy to identify, but I think good students of English, they do need to be independent. They need to be self-reliant and able to identify weaknesses, not just in pronunciation, but in vocabulary and grammar. You need to be quite proactive if you're going to improve something. You could record yourself. That could be a really good thing to do. Have a listen, perhaps compare it to some other accurate models. Now, when I say accurate models, yes, these are invariably going to be native speakers. But I think it's good to, maybe listen to a range of accurate models and a range of accents, because this reflects the world. There is a whole wide range out there, not just British or American. What else could you do? Well, I think you need to get more knowledgeable about pronunciation. What do you know about pronunciation? Do you know about individual sounds? Do you know the phonemic script, which is a way of drawing letters that you sometimes see in dictionaries? Do you know anything about sentence stress? This is a key feature of English. It has a certain kind of timing in the language. Yes. Do you know anything about fluency? I think it's really important to kind of identify your weakness through some of these categories. As I mentioned, I think it'd be great to seek expert advice. A teacher or a friend could help you out, have a chat, point out some mistakes you make. And I think there's a kind of golden nugget here. You should remember not to focus on it too much. There's so much more to learning a language. Sometimes people talk to me about their pronunciation, and it feels like it is the most important thing in the world to them, and it's really bringing them down. I think, there's always a danger that it takes over everything. And I think we really need to remember that there is a lot to learning a language. There is vocabulary, there's grammar. You might be learning English in order to pass an exam. You'll need to know how to pass that exam, whether it's something like Cambridge Advanced or IELTS. There are so many things that you could improve. We're just talking about speaking here. There's also writing skills that are very important in life. There's listening, there's reading, and pronunciation is a very, very small part of all of that. Okay. So I'm going to try and be positive here as well and say, what else should you focus on apart from pronunciation? If we are just talking about speaking and communication, I want you to really think about improving your communication prowess. What is prowess? That's a great word, isn't it? It's a bit like, I suppose it comes from the word power, doesn't it? It's like the tools and skills that you learn to give you power or a special skill. So I want you to think about improving your communication prowess. What does that mean? You could learn some new words or phrases. You might want to ask yourself this question. When was the last time you used a new word or phrase? Um, I'm sure many of you would agree that you use the same vocabulary, the same structures time and time again, and you might feel like you're just repeating things that you learned when you were in high school. I think anyone can relate to that. So kind of remember this question and think, right, I want to proactively learn a new word or a new phrase every day, every other day, every week. Set yourself small targets, achievable targets. For me, vocabulary, new words, new phrases is really, really important. Um, if you want to improve your communication prowess, if you want to impress people, a lot of it is to do with the vocabulary you use, the phrases. I think it's super important. Um, have a conversation with someone where you can get into the flow. Talk about something that gets you excited. That could help with that flow. And what I'm really talking about here is fluency. So being able to speak without stopping. Yeah. I say talk about something that gets you excited because, if we talk about topics that are meaty, relate to our personal interests, might be slightly controversial, I think that's a really good way to start getting into the flow. Your brain is kind of activated, and you want to kind of delve into the back of your brain for vocabulary and phrases that are going to fit into this topic. I think you should also practice listening to someone. You might want to ask yourself this question. Do you actually listen, or do you just wait for your turn to speak? Listening is a really important skill. I mentioned earlier that, it's not just about speaking and pronunciation, but there are other skills like writing, reading, listening. Well, listening is really important. But I think also when it comes to social interaction, whether it's in Polish or English, I think actively listening to someone, paying attention, and then connecting your speech to that is really, really important. It's going to give a very positive impression of you as a person, give a positive impression of your language skills, and your overall communication prowess. Um, so sometimes in English lessons we have language, and we call them turn-taking phrases. They're very important when you're having a conversation and you want to kind of discuss something and maybe come to a conclusion. Some examples are things like this. I see your point, but um, I can't completely agree with you. Or what do you think? What's your point of view? These kind of turn-taking phrases, so they enable conversation to happen between two, three more people. I think sometimes students get a bit turned off to that. They feel that, oh, it's another one of these lessons where I'm going to learn these chunks of language that I've heard before. But in my experience, students, unless they are asked to use these, they don't actually use them. So it's more, oh, teacher wants me to use these, so I will. But I think you should actively use these in real conversation. Practice taking turns. This links to the last point about listening to someone. I think it will really give a positive impression of your communication prowess. And my last point for this section, and it's probably the most important point. I want you to speak English more than in your English lessons. And remember this sentence here: the really great speakers have honed their skills over many hours of contact with the language. What does it mean to hone your skill? Well, practice, develop, fine-tune, perfect. It's all of those those things. If you are to hone your skill, your communication skills in English, then you need hours and hours of contact with the language. An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week in English lessons is not really enough. You need to find other opportunities to practice this and get more contact with the language. How can you do that? Tricky question. Are there clubs you can join? Speaking clubs, especially in the new times we find ourselves in with technology and the pandemic forcing us to be online. There are so many different groups out there, whether they're on social media or external platforms, different groups where you can sign up and you can join speaking clubs, because there are lots of people out there that want to practice their English. What else could you do? Practice with people you live with. Perhaps other people are learning English. Practice with friends. You need to find these opportunities, and it's not easy. I appreciate that. It's not easy to find the time, but if you are to hone your skill, your communication prowess, I think that's of vital importance. So I'm just going to recap some of this that I've got. I'm going to go back a few slides. Okay. So we had some of these targets and goals earlier. I want to sound British. I want to sound like a native speaker. I want to impress people. And are there any of those that you think are unrealistic now, that you might have changed your mind over? I'm hoping that it is the first two. I want to sound British. I want to sound like a native speaker. As I said, the kind of natural surrounding we're in may make it impossible. Wanting to impress people, I can understand. What that means could be quite complex. I've been impressed by people speaking on the radio, speaking on the TV, non-native speakers of English that are just really good at communicating their message. They may have really thick accents. I may be able to tell straight away they're from Germany or Russia or I don't want to just pick on countries here, or somewhere else, France. But I think the point for me is, are you good at communicating what you want to communicate to me? Are you using some good vocabulary, some good chunks of language? Are you a good listener? Those are the kind of things that I think you should really focus on. That's how you might impress people, which in that respect is not just about impressing through your pronunciation. It's impressing through your whole communication prowess. So English as a truly global language, well, I'll recap. 1.5 billion learners of English. That's an awful lot of people, and I would say an absolute small percentage of those people feel that they have perfect pronunciation. I would be amazed if it's as high as 1 million. Population of the UK, 67 million, with a whole variety of accents. Is it possible to try and sound like those 67 million people with such variety? Population of these native speaker countries, well, it's huge, but the diversity in pronunciations is enormous. Number of accents, dialects, wow, so many. What's the difference between an accent and a dialect? Any idea? Well, An accent is basically the way you pronounce words, and a dialect can extend to different words, different language. For example, in Birmingham dialect, people like to say bab, bab, B-A-B, which comes from baby, and it's a kind of term of endearment. It means, well, I'll give you an example. How are you today, Bab? It's a bit like, um, you know, darling or honey or something sweet and cute. Yeah. But if I said that to somebody in London, they probably wouldn't understand that word, Bab. So that is an example of a dialect. So who do you want to sound like? I'll reiterate, perhaps sounding like yourself is best of all. Okay, I'll just scroll through some of these and we'll finish on this page. Thank you everyone for your attention. We have some information here. You can register for a course at the British Council. We have a web link there, which I think you have access to. You can book a consultation and the other points. I'll let you just read through. And do remember to take part in our competition. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everybody. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll come back to the platform. Fantastic. So I can see that a few questions have appeared in the chat, which I can answer. Okay, so we've got Rafael, Monica, and Paula. Let's have a look at Rafael. So where we can have real conversations in English outside the classroom. Yeah, I tried to give some examples. Yeah, I must admit I often find this question very difficult to answer. It's not easy, as I mentioned before. I think technology is a way, but you certainly need to get a bit more social. You need to find out where the social groups are that can give you access to that. It's not easy. It's certainly something you need to explore. Monica, is 2 hours per week enough to practice English for foreigners? Okay, English for foreigners. So you're just talking about learning English as a foreign language? Is this what this means? I assume. Is 2 hours a week enough? Going back to one of those points I made, I would say no, it's not. It's certainly a very good start, and with busy lives, I appreciate that 2 hours will be a lot. I think it's a very good start, but I think if I mean, it really depends on your goals, your expectations. But if you really want more, if you're really looking to push through and improve, I think you need more. It does depend on your level. Those at the lower levels, A2, perhaps even lower, perhaps B1. I think 2 hours is a really good start, and you can improve quite quickly or show signs of improvement. Once you get to higher levels, especially around B2, C1 especially, you reach a kind of plateau where things tend to stay the same, which is how I'm sure a lot of you feel. And then to push through that plateau is very difficult, and that's where you need more. Okay, there's Paula question. Are there only speaking conversation lessons at the British Council? No, there's a variety of lessons. They fall into a couple of main categories. So we have the my class general English lessons. So you focus on improving your English in a general sense. So focusing on speaking, reading, writing, listening. You try and cover as many things as possible. Conversational, lots of speaking work. That's general English. There's also English for exams. So you might study for a particular exam like Cambridge Advanced, First, Proficiency, um, IELTS. Um, there's lots of different lessons. If you're talking about secondary, again they kind of fall into two groups, general or exams. I think that covers most. We do have some conversation classes as well. We also run conversation clubs, which are kind of free additions. We have grammar club, pronunciation club. These are all additions if I say club. But the two main categories of lessons are general or exam. Yeah. And Sylvia is asking, can you speak Polish? Can I speak Polish? Yes. What does that mean? Not, I'm not amazing. I'm not. I'm certainly not C1 advanced level. I'm probably. I'm B1 at best, intermediate level, and that's being very generous. I get lots of practice with my my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, our nanny. So I have lots of situations where I can practice, and I'm surrounded by it. So I have a bit of an advantage when it comes to pronunciation. I get to hear uh, Polish pronunciation all the time, so it's kind of around me. Yeah. So maybe some of my Polish pronunciation is good, some of it's probably terrible. Who knows? I my own perspective is interesting. My own perspective on my Polish language and my Polish pronunciation, I do not care. The main priority for me is to communicate my message, get by in life, maybe have some in-depth conversations. It's all about content for me and getting certain things across. I know it's really different with everybody. They may work in their job where English is really high stakes, really important, and how you sound and how you deliver your message is really, really important. I understand that. I do. So it's probably quite easy for me. I chat to family and friends and our nanny, and that's enough for me. Um, Talking about accent. Okay, next question. Ola, talking about accent. Can you guess where someone is from based on their accent? Well, yeah, definitely. Um, in the broader sense, countries, America, Australia, um, certainly England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. Yeah, you can hear it, and I can definitely distinguish it. Sometimes it gets a bit tricky. I'm not amazing at telling the difference between Canada and America. Sometimes I can do it. Australia, New Zealand, I don't find that easy either. I guess it really depends on your experience, you know. If you're surrounded by Australian speakers or New Zealand speakers, you probably really tell the difference. So a lot of that is to do with experience. Yeah, I can tell the difference between many different English accents. I sometimes find it difficult to tell the difference between Manchester and Leeds, to be specific, because they're quite close to each other. Although someone from Leeds would say they're completely different, so it really depends where you're from and what experience you have. In terms of finding it hard to understand some of these accents, I mean, I've been to Scotland a few times, and it's not always easy. I can be thrown into a situation listening to a Scottish speaker, and I'd find it really difficult. But given time, I think your mind adjusts, your ears adjust, you kind of tune in like a radio, and I think it's possible to kind of practice listening to an accent, and it gets easier. So if I lived in Scotland for a bit of time, I would certainly it would certainly get easier for me, definitely. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so we may be towards the end of the Q&A, which brings us to the end a little bit early. Unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to ask, or anything you're interested in, anything that's incomplete from my talk, go ahead. I'll have a swig of water while you take that in. Okay. I think perhaps that is the end then. I'll say thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you're based in Krakow, maybe I'll see you at the British Council in Krakow. If not, good luck with your English language learning journey, and I hope you achieve all you want to achieve. Thank you.